All right, in today's episode, we are going to talk about really the importance of your brand and why you really need to matter about that. So we've got Matias from EuroKera who's going to walk us through his story and EuroKera's story on how they went from being around for many, many, many years, not having any marketing, to saying, hey, we need to really do this marketing thing, and why they started with brand first. So you don't want to miss this. I'm Danny Gonzalez. We're in the awesome Optum Production Studios, and this is IndustrialSage.
Welcome to IndustrialSage, a free weekly video podcast series all about digital marketing for industrial manufacturers. Hear interviews with your peers and find out how they're solving the same challenges that you might be facing in your own field. Coming to you from the Optimum Production Studio in Atlanta, Georgia, this is IndustrialSage.
Well, you are in for a treat for today's episode. We have Mathias from EuroKera. He's going to be walking us through their story on branding and why it's really important and how they came to be. So before we jump into this, Mathias, if you could just introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, background, all that good stuff.
Sure. So my name is Matias. I've been working with EuroKera now for about 4 years. I am French, which explains my accent in English.
Oh, okay.
Right. And I started working for them 4 years ago. Before that, I studied marketing in Europe. I came over to the US, and I've been working with the company for a while now. We manufacture glass ceramic products. So for glass ceramic cooking, but also fireplaces and all that kind of high temperature use. Mm-hmm. So it's a highly technical glass. We have 5 factories, so 2 in France, 1 in the US, 1 in Thailand, and 1 in China. And we supply customers all over the world. So that's pretty much what we do. We have a French origin that we're very proud of. Mm-hmm. And I've been working in marketing since the very start. When I arrived at EuroKera, there was actually nothing there. So it's been challenging, but we're building our brand, and we're building pretty much everything from scratch.
Sure, yeah. And then that never happens. I mean, nobody who's watching this probably or listening, if you're listening on iTunes, I'm sure that nobody has ever run into that where, hey, we don't have marketing, all of a sudden we are. But EuroKera is interesting to me, and definitely not an anomaly. It's very common. I mean, you guys, if I understand correctly, do you guys deal directly with distributors? You do go straight to the other manufacturers? What does that look like, just to set the foundation?
So we deal directly with the manufacturers. Mm-hmm. So okay. Your big brands that that manufacture appliances, for example, we deal directly with them. So our teams go and meet with them directly.
Perfect. All right. So in that sense, you guys did not have a marketing department for years. I mean, how old is EuroKera again?
It was born in 1990.
Okay, all right. So it's got some history. It's
got a decent history.
So all of a sudden, when they said, "Hey, you know what? I think we need to do this marketing thing," and then you came on board. Like, what did that look like? Why did that decision happen?
So why the decision happen is kind of unclear to me. I don't know why after 20 plus years, a company decides to do marketing. I think it's because we have a great product, so it's been, it's very unique, mm-hmm. and there's only a few manufacturers of glass ceramic in the world. So, if you're manufacturing glass ceramic, well, you're going to sell it because there's only so much supply.
Right, you're right.
And so, it's easy to find customers. They're big, they're easy to locate.
Sure, yeah.
And I think, it's been very engineering based. So far, with just negotiations, of course, but pricing, but also about a lot of the technical side, because it's a very technical product. I think what changed is now we realize that you have to also educate the consumers, mm-hmm. To sort of create that demand from the other side, the push-pull mm-hmm. strategies. And that really helps with your business as a whole, because even if you're not dealing with them mm-hmm. directly, people now with social media, with internet, with all these tools that they can have, right at the tip of their fingers.
Right.
Well, they are educated and they have access to the information way sooner mm-hmm. than they used to. And so now you can sort of, if you're in marketing or in sales, you can sort of play with that.
Right.
And sort of use that to your advantage if you do some marketing and if you build, your brand around that.
So push-pull. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You bring up a really good point. Too. You look at now just with the internet and all the other advanced. I mean, you could argue too, like home, box stores and stuff like that. I mean, those the Home Depots and Lowe's, which have been around, I guess for a good while. But if you really look at, the history of your parent company you were talking about earlier, Saint-Gobain, that, and I pronounced that right?
Saint-Gobain, yeah.
Saint-Gobain. All right. Okay. I got to get my inner French going there. So I am half French Canadian, just side note. But je n'ai pas de français.
That's pretty good. That's all you need.
Perfect. I'm good. They've been around for 350 years, and so just these big box retail store where you go to actually do the DIY was largely not there before. It's the minority of the time. Now things have changed, and then it's been expedited, like you said, with the internet. And then it's interesting too. You got a lot of consumers who otherwise might not care about the product now, because presumably because they have access to it, the information that is that they can, they're a little bit more informed. They want to know all these different things. So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. So interesting. How did you guys? When you came on board? What was some of those first things that you guys did? You said, "Hey, we want to do marketing now." I'm assuming there was something that was done beforehand that was marketing-esque, right?
So there was some stuff that were already in place when I started. One of them was a website, but so when I got on board, it was in 2000, I guess 13, 14. It was already a very old website for that time. And so it was basically kind of an online brochure, which I'm sure, it's not uncommon in our business. I still love companies that, still have websites like these. But it was very simple. It was sort of marketing, but it was not, it was not going the extra mile. It was not even trying to connect with our customers. No need to say the end users. No connection there. So this was already in place. We had all kinds of different collaterals, brochures, and little spec sheets and all kinds of stuff. You name it, and they were all one thing that really hurts your company and your brand. I think is when you have all these things, and they all have a different visual aspect. And we even had like different logos. Some of the logos are on different colors. It's some things that may sound crazy to some businesses.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm sure in the B2B world, it's not that uncommon for companies,
Right.
To have that kind of issue. So one of the first things that we did was, sort of bring cohesion into that, and sort of, bring a real corporate look, a visual identity. And we're still working on that. It's taking a tremendous amount of time because, when you have a small team and you have a big company, and so many countries and everything, and so many collaterals, it takes a while to get there. But so this is sort of like one of the first things that we started doing is, create a new website that was matching the image that we wanted the company to convey. And also then, make all the collaterals sort of match the look of the website.
Right,
So that was the first thing because, web is very important now. And I always remember somebody told me that one time, and I thought it was the greatest quote I've ever heard from marketing. They said, do the basics, but do them brilliantly.
I like that.
And I think that's something that any B2B marketer should apply to his business because we all have limited resources. We all have a lot of challenges. We all have very specific targets, audiences, and challenges. But I think if you do the basics and you do them brilliantly, then that is the most efficient way that you can do things. So you have to really focus on a set of key things that you want to do.
No, I love that. That's an awesome. So we're definitely going to be using. That's definitely a tweetable, quotable. You mentioned that. I really love that.
It's not for me that I won't take the credit for it.
We're going to give you all the credit. Don't worry. So one of the interesting questions that I would have with that is that obviously brand identity is really important. But you mentioned before you deal with a lot of engineers and stuff. Like why? Let me ask you this: why is it important to do that? Why having cohesion across all the different marketing collateral and websites and all these different things? Like why do that and why is that important?
Because that's the only way, in my opinion, to build a strong brand. If you have different looks, if you have different colors, if you have different fonts, if you have different images, or people using low-res images, or at the end, even if you don't do that intentionally, but you're hurting the company's image. And whereas if everybody speaks, one voice and everything looks the same, well, you build that brand, you build that strength, and then you attach a message to this brand, you attach a feel to it. And that's where I think the value is added to your products. Because nowadays there's tons of brands in the world. There's new companies setting up every day. And in glass ceramic, it's a little bit less true because it's a very specific, highly technical product, but you still have more and more competition. And you have, new companies starting in Asia, for example, and they may not be good today or good enough today with their products. The quality may not be the same. It is not the same. It's not even admitted. It's not. But you never know what the future holds.
Right.
And so for me, that's where marketing. That's the main mission of marketing, is to protect your brand. And you want to protect it in the present, but you also want to protect it in the future.
Yeah.
But you have to start that work early and mainly on your brand to build that brand to where your brand is strong enough to add a specific value to your product. That is besides quality, pricing, innovation. You want to bring another feel to it. You want people to be able to connect with your brand, because that's going to be a huge difference maker, I think. When people feel a certain way about buying your products, which is one of the mission of marketing in general.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that's very important. It's just as true for B2B than B2C.
Right. Yeah.
Specialized product like glass ceramic, and less specialized products like Starbucks coffee.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's very important. It's you just add value to your products by building your brand.
Totally makes sense. I mean, really, it's creating that perception. It's that, it's interesting you mentioned, you got things that have different fonts and different colors and everything's just scattered. That really does just kind of have this idea of like, man, there's just stuff all over the place and things aren't, I don't know, I'm not going this way. And I think a lot of manufacturers really focus on the quality of their products, as they should. I mean, that's really important to making sure that, performance and the function is a high quality there. But I think a lot of times that branding kind of gets like, well, that's the frou-frou stuff, like whatever over there. Like we're focusing on this. But I love how you said that really creates really stronger products, that really that image, that perception of, okay, these guys have got it going on. They're high quality. So if you have, 5 different versions of logos, it's kind of like there is a feeling. It might not be necessarily like right there top of mind, but I guess maybe there's a feeling like, And I think we've all experienced that before. You see, even just in logo and letterhead development, or a website, you look at it and you're like, oh wow, that looks like they've got things put together. Versus this looks like this is from 1998. And
on top of that, it adds a professional look to what you do. So if you're a very professional, highly technical company, well, you sort of want to show your products in the professional manner.
Right.
So that adds to that too, definitely.
That makes a lot of sense.
To me, it's just the same. You can sort of take the example of, if you have 1 million people yelling 1 million words, different words, well, you're not going to understand anything. But now if you have 1 million people, yelling one word, well, that's going to be pretty loud, and then you can ignore it. So that's what I think a cohesive brand does. Then you just have to pick the word you want to.
Pick the word, which can be the most difficult.
That is.
But I love it. I love all those different things. You also mentioned too, just protecting your brand, not your band. But maybe if you have a band and you need it, that's important too. But making sure it's not diluted, especially when the competition coming in. I mean, that's a big thing. I hear we've got a lot of manufacturers. They say, hey, look, we're the biggest, we're the baddest, we're we've always been around, but yet you've got all these competitors that are popping up all over the place in different parts of the world and whatever. It's important.
It's very important, and that's why you need that strong brand, because in the future you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And you need to have to build the foundations, the basics. You have to build them early to then be ready when you actually need to use them to differentiate yourself or your business from the others.
Absolutely. So I want to move on a little bit here. So we talked about, you came in and said, hey, first thing, let's put some cohesion to our brand. Let's really start, dialing it in. Still working on that. I mean, it takes time. It's not something overnight you're done. But, what was next? What was sort of that next thing? Okay, we got this and we're working on the next thing. What was that?
So I think one of the next thing that you have to do once you get to the first stage, which is sort of getting things together, then you have to market your marketing department, and that in the B2B world is sometimes very complicated because marketing has sort of a bad image. You're just an expense bucket where people just throw a ton of money and they never see any return on it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you have to be cautious of, I think, early too. And people in the B2B world, and I can talk for EuroKera, it's very engineering heavy.
Yeah.
So people who actually love numbers, data, graphics, charts.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to bring them after a while. Once you're done, setting up everything, your website, your social media, if you have some, all your collaterals. That's one thing that I think you want to do is to bring them measurements. And I think we hear that a lot from everybody now because that's the big thing. But it's very important, I think, especially more in B2B where people love numbers. And and they're right to love them because that's you want to see what you get for your money.
Right. Yeah. It is a business. I mean,
it's a business. After all, we're here to make money.
Right.
So you definitely want to do that, and I think that's where digital marketing for me is completely, it's completely revolutionized marketing in general because now you can finally measure things that you're doing. Like I was saying earlier, if you give a brochure, like a paper, brochure to somebody, well, he may walk at the corner and put it in the trash. Whereas, if you have a website or if you have social media channels, if you have a newsletter or a blog or anything like that, well, you can clearly measure, how many visitors you get, how much traffic you get, how many of these convert, the quality of your traffic, the funnels, everything. You can really have a great picture of everything that's happening, and that's definitely what I think the executives and all that. That's what they want to see, I think, after a while, because that's going to help build your reputation and then build the trust that they have in you, and that helps you keeping the momentum going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So it's just having I'm half numbers guy, so I get it. I totally appreciate it having that there. But there's also bringing that sort of that strong that element of it, making sure you're building that brand. But then if you have different areas that you can be able to measure, to be able to say, hey, look, this is what this is doing. Even if it's just like, hey, look, increased web traffic. Oh, wow, this is great. We're getting something out of that. And then kind of building on that. Is that what else have you guys? What was the next, step after that?
After that, I guess it's kind of a never-ending work. But after that, you'll find out that some things work and some things don't. And then you have to also realize that you're limited in what you can do, you can't do.
Right.
And so I think that after that, you're going to get to a phase to where now you're mature enough to where you can sort of identify and choose what you're going to do. Because I feel like at first when I started and when we start everything, we're sort of running in every direction, trying to do everything. And, we thought we could do everything, and now we've learned, I think, from this, and seeing the measurements and everything, getting all that data. Now we've learned that there's only there's only so many things that we can do, and and among these things, these work and these don't. So then you really want to focus on what's working.
Yeah.
And also what's very efficient, because I think a lot of companies like EuroKera have limited resources for marketing, and so you really want to focus the efforts of your team on what's efficient. And also now with these great tools like automation and all that, so you have to also sort of think. Well, if you have customers all around the world and so many people to reach, well, what's the most efficient way to do this, and how can softwares and automation help me to do this? So that's also where you can definitely then, when you get to that stage, you can start thinking about all that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I really enjoyed our conversation on this. Was there anything else you'd want to add, throw in there? We've covered quite a few topics.
Yeah, I think we did. No, I'm fine. Nothing to add. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Well, thanks for coming on. If anybody would have any questions, want to reach you afterwards, what's the best way of
you can reach me through the website.
Okay.
So if you go on www.eurokera.com, there's a contact form, and you can here put a title, and if you name Sage Industrial. To your contact form, put that as a title, and I'll get in touch with you. So
awesome. That'd be great. And I really love the what was the phrase you said? Do
the basics, but do them brilliantly.
Do the basics, but do them.
I love this quote. Yeah, somebody. It's a lady that I had the pleasure to work with who told me that once, and I thought that was the best quote I've ever heard, especially when you apply it to B2B marketing. So
awesome. Thanks again. This was awesome.
No problem.
This is really great. So yeah, another really awesome and great episode here with Matias here from EuroKera. So a lot of takeaways here. I think that, the biggest thing is really just like Matias mentioned with a quote, really focus on the basics, but do them brilliantly. I love that quote. So I think there's a big challenge that we have as marketers to be able to say, hey, look at all these things we could do, especially in digital marketing. You look at your marketing stack, you're like, oh, we can do this, we can do this, and we do this. And all, you have, before you know it, you've got 30 different technologies, and they're making you scatter all over the place. Focus on the basics and really do that. So a lot here, a lot to unpack. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them. You can send them to us at industrialsage.com/questions. And be sure to share this and like this and put this all over the place on the social medias. If you're listening on iTunes, we'd love a review if you feel so compelled to do that. And until next time, I'm Danny Gonzalez, and this is Industrial Sage.